This was a 5-year anniversary of when I had stepped down from full-time ministry. So I thought I'd talk about that this week. And so as a leader, again, I struggled with shepherding. I struggled with patience. I struggled with my expectations of myself, my expectations of other, my expectations of ministry in general. And what I knew was that the part of ministry that I loved was preparing and teaching. Now, most pastors will tell you that they love to preach and they love to teach, but I have always valued the preparation for the teaching just as much, if not more. In fact, I've always said to people, the passion that I preach with is a result of the love of the preparation that I had in preparing. So I love studying God's word. I love getting in deep. And I love then teaching that. It doesn't matter whether I preach, whether I teach, whatever. I also believe I'm gifted in discipleship. That coming alongside that close, I don't know if closed is the word, but that more intimate idea of mentorship and discipling that isn't necessarily with the broad room, but with one-on-one or in small groups. I really love that. And as a pastor, one of the things that drove me nuts was that as a pastor, I did not have time. I didn't do nearly as much discipling and mentoring as I wanted to. There was so many things pulling you in so many directions. And, it sounds easy to say, well, if you're discipling somebody, bring them along and all that. And yeah, you try to do that. But again, it was something that I really struggled with. So teaching, preparing to teach, preaching, developing and encouraging leaders, that's something that I love, is sitting in rooms with leaders and growing together with them and also encouraging them, and then discipling and mentoring. All these things I had a burning passion to do, and 5 years later, the retrospective, is I still have these same passions. I just haven't developed or found a ministry that allows me to fully express them and also provide a livable wage. It's the bottom line. So whether it's things like this podcast, young adult ministry like Fusion that I started, all these things fit in my area of passion and I believe gifting. And I do them out of love and service to God and the church. But none of them have, in the 5 years that I've been away from full-time ministry, none of them have developed in a way that they generate love offerings or revenue at a rate where I could actually walk away from my job. So I still work a full-time job, and then I minister on the side as opportunity presents itself. The most asked question that I've always gotten over 5 years, two questions, 1 and 1A. Do you miss it? And would you do it again? 1 and 1A. Do you miss it? No. I've always said to people, no, I don't miss it. I will share a caveat to that in a minute. But by and large, no. I miss, as I've told people, I miss preaching. I miss preaching and teaching on a regular, consistent basis. But again, pastoring is so much more. And I didn't miss all the so much more. Would you do it again? From day one, from the day I stepped down, from the day I announced that I was stepping down, I've always said I would never say that I would never do it again. I would always consider doing it again. I would. I think of it. I would say often. I would say rarely does a month go by that I don't think about it in some form or fashion. If I hear that a church is without a pastor, I will think, wonder if I should explore that. That might be interesting. That sort of thing. Now, when I said, I said that the question is asked of me, do you miss it? What I would say now, which I didn't say back then, but what I would say now is I acknowledge a feeling or a lack of feeling that what I do has any eternal value. I shouldn't say any eternal value. I understand 1 Corinthians 10:31. I live by that. That whatever you do, do to the glory of God. I believe that you can be a ditch digger for God's glory. I believe that every person who, whatever vocation they're in, if you're a believer, you have the ability, in fact, the calling, to do that for God's glory and to allow him to use you in that sphere. I always talk about the sphere of influence that God has given you. Use that sphere of influence for his glory. And you will find contentment in what you do as you do that. For me, the way I'm wired, the way God has wired me, is for impact. It's the only way that I can put it. From the time I was little, I could never just do anything. I always had to do things big. I always have had to have impact. And again, I'm not saying that a Christian living their life, living out their vocation, working their vocation isn't having impact. You are having impact. I'm just saying that the way God has wired me is to think big impact. My wife and I were at an arena. It was an indoor arena that probably seated about 15,000 people. And we were going to see a comedian. And we had really good seats. So we're like in the second or third row. And after the comedian was done, we're just kind of waiting as the crowd mills out. Because, when you're that far down in the bowl, trying to get out is going to be, you might as well just sit and enjoy for a little bit. And I'm looking around. I'm looking all around this arena. And I said to my wife, the funniest difference between you and I, you would never want to be up on that stage. There's no circumstance in which you would ever want to be on that stage. I said, I pray to get on stages that big around people, this many people. Not for my ego, but for the potential impact. Like, why impact one person when you can impact 15,000? That's just how I think. And it's like God has to always constantly remind me, yeah, but you impact people one person at a time. And it's this great dichotomy in my life in which I love discipleship. I love one-on-one. I love to take a young man and sort of mentor them and bring them along in the faith, while simultaneously wanting to get on the biggest stage to talk to the most amount of people to hopefully impact the most number of lives. And so it's tough for me to work, my current job, which is a great job and I do very well at it, but don't feel like I have great impact. I know that it's at least part of the reason why I got involved in politics, was that this was another area in a way that I could impact people. In fact, the fuller story of my life is that I was headed towards politics, and then I went into full-time ministry, and then upon stepping down from full-time ministry, I sort of headed back towards politics. And again, same reason, impact. What would a Christian influence in politics look like, and how many people would that impact? So all of this has always led me to consider pastoring. Again, there is something beautiful about pastoring a group of people, of standing in front of them week after week preaching, mixing your life with theirs and having impact that is a multiplication impact. As I impact you, you impact others, and it multiplies. And this was one of the things where on my worst day in pastoring, I always knew that I was having impact. Now, I couldn't always see it, and that's where I had to trust God. I would often say, yeah, I'm trusting God that the things I'm doing. But you do. I knew. That was a part of my faith, was I knew. And what's great is over the years, even as I've stepped down, people continue to come to me and they share the impact that my years of pastoring had on them. So, 5-year retrospective. Over the past 5 years, I would say that I still have the burning passion to minister. I still consider pastoring on a regular basis. I still have not ruled it out. I still seek to have great impact. And who knows? Who knows? So I'll leave it with this. I'm going to do a bonus episode. I'm going to do a bonus episode for our Patreon supporters. And in that bonus episode, I'm going to share about what I call the golden years. I preached this past Sunday, and I sort of shared about this 3-year stretch that I call the golden years of the church that I pastored. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit in our bonus. And for everybody else, you know what's next. It's an SNL with a C. Subscribe, notify, hit the notification, like, and leave a comment. And remember, I'm always available to speak at your church, doing pulpit fill, at your events, conferences, whatever. Do workshops, do speaking at your event. You can always look in the description of the video and you'll see where you can get a hold of me for that. And also in this, I don't mention this a whole lot, but in the description of each video, there's always also a link to the audio version. And if you go back to that audio page, it actually houses over 160 episodes. This incarnation of this podcast, of me talking for 15, 20 minutes, or in this case, I think it was 30 minutes tonight. This incarnation of it is not the first incarnation. For 3 years, myself and a team of young adults had long-form discussions, 45, 55 minutes on topics related to life and faith and all that. And I'd love if you went back and listened to some of those. And you can do that by clicking on that link. So I leave you with that. And I leave you with, as I said, knowing that if you subscribe to our Patreon page, you can go there and get a bonus. And if you're not a subscriber to the Patreon page, you can actually join it for as little as $1. Hey, that's not bad, man. So I leave you. And as I leave you, I say, as I always do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God.